Do you guys stab people to conserve ammo too? Like, it's a normal thing, right? Not just me. Because whenever I do it, everyone else at paintball just runs away. Greetings gamers, welcome back to Top 10 Gaming. I am your host Connor Monroe, and it is still spooky season. So what are you gonna do? Watch horror movies and play horror games, that's for damn sure. What if you wanna watch the movies as well as play them? Well, that is what we are going to help you with today. Before we get started, the password to this video is to like and subscribe to Top 10 Gaming for daily gamer content. And comment down below with your favorite horror movie that hasn't received a game yet. While you do that, I'll get started with today's list of the top 10 scary video game adaptations you'll never forget, be it for good reasons, bad reasons, or just after you play them. Intro time. Number 10, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Coming out for the Atari 2600 in 1983 from Wizard Video Games, this side-scroller was actually ignored by most retailers due to its horrific scenes of in-game violence. While yes, Leatherface is mostly a cluster of blue pixels, he still goes on a rampage killing hundreds, all because of you. You take on the role of Leatherface for this game, and with his mighty chainsaw that is also a cluster of blue pixels, you cut down all of those who oppose you, or are just running away screaming. Since it was one of the first horror-themed video games ever released, you run back and forth across a field attempting to slay trespassers while avoiding fences, wheelchairs, and cow skulls. Each kill gives you 1,000 points and costs fuel for your chainsaw. However, every 5,000 points, therefore 5 kills, you get awarded additional fuel to continue your murder spree. You lose a life when your current tank runs out of gas, and the game ends when all of your gas from all of your tanks is gone. So long, and tanks for all the murder. And at number 9, A Nightmare on Elm Street. A Nightmare on Elm Street came out in 1990 for the NES, and while there is a game of the same title for the Commodore 64 released in 1989, they are still different games. With the ability to play with up to 4 people, the player takes control of a teenager who is out to collect the bones of the supernatural serial killer Freddy Krueger to salt and burn them in their high school's furnace supernatural style. The game takes place on Elm Street and is a side-scroller where you fight off hostile creatures such as zombies, dogs, cats, those are very hostile, skeletons, bats, and minotaurs. The player also gets tired. The sleep meter indicates how close the player is to falling asleep. If even one player falls asleep, all players will enter the dream world, which changes the monsters and causes the player to take more damage. The sleep meter can be increased with cups of coffee, but honestly, fighting giant spiders would be enough to just make me never fall asleep again. Next up at number 8, BLOODWINGS Pumpkinhead's Revenge. This FPS PC game was published by EA in 1995 and is loosely based on Pumpkinhead 2 BLOODWINGS. This game was not well received due to poor, clunky controls and bad camera angles. The game was also criticized as being a Doom ripoff, while the general consensus was mostly negative. The gameplay involves running around dungeons, shooting or avoiding monsters, and interacting with portals that play scenes from the movie. PC Gamer US rated the game at 46%, which I am unsure what that means. Is it like a test and they only got around half the things right? Like, what? Entertainment Weekly gave the game a C, and someone from Computer Gaming World number 135 stated that the scariest thing is that the game may be better than the movie. Yikes. And at number 7, Jaws Unleashed. Released in 2006, Jaws Unleashed is an action-adventure game inspired by Jaws, which should be fairly obvious. The game has an open world where the player is able to freely roam in the water, killing other animals and humans while destroying everything they can. This game takes place 30 years after the first film. Amity Island is making corporate connections with respected companies to improve the island's economy. The increased population and industrial activity has caused the main protagonist of the game to return, our player character, Jaws. In the tutorial, you end up being captured and brought to the Amity version of SeaWorld, where you escape and burn the damn thing to the ground. But not literally, since it's a water park and you're a shark who can't really burn things. If you think you can play as a pacifist shark, you are wrong, as the game has a mechanic where Jaws will get hungry, and as you get hungry your health diminishes, forcing you to eat constantly. The destructive capabilities are honestly incredible and something you really need to try for yourself. Put the hammer away, I meant in game, goddamn. And at number 6, Sweet Home. Sweet Home is a survival horror RPG developed by Capcom in 1989, based on the Japanese horror film of the same name. You play as a team of 5 filmmakers exploring a mansion in search of precious frescoes. You must explore the intricately designed mansion and encounter evil ghosts and other hostile supernatural entities, while keeping the player characters alive. with limited items. The game's director toured the film set in order to gain inspiration for the game. So much time and effort was put into this game that after release, it was generally thought to be better than the movie. The game only got a Japan release due to the violence and gruesome imagery, along with the unpopularity of RPGs outside of Japan at the time. Sweet Home even served as inspiration for Resident Evil, with Capcom going back to the game to get some design ideas for their new game, which as we all know became a huge success. Halfway through at number 5, The Thing. The Thing, released in 2002 by Universal Interactive, is a third-person shooter survival horror game, set as a sequel to the 1982 film The Thing. The game revolves around Captain Blake of the US Special Forces and his quest to find out what happened to his research team at their Antarctic outpost. The game was endorsed by John Carpenter, the director of the film, who voices Captain Blake. The game sold over 1 million units worldwide across all platforms and even had a sequel in the works that was cancelled when Computer Artworks, the developer, went into receivership. While it is a third-person game, you are able to enter first person for more accurate targeting during combat. But while in first person, you are only able to step slightly to the left and the right. The game has 3 main enemies: the Scuttlers, which form from the limbs of infected personnel, the Walkers, which can only be killed by fire, yeah that sounds kind of familiar, and the bosses. The player can also encounter several NPCs throughout the game and have them join you. They all have their own special abilities. Their AI relies on a fear and trust system, which I think makes the game pretty unique. The NPCs can actually fear that you are in fact the Thing, while they can also transform into monsters. Sounds like high school to me. And at number 4, Evil Dead, A Fistful of Boomstick. This hack and slash game based on the Evil Dead trilogy is set 11 years after Army of Darkness and 3 years after the game's predecessor, Hail to the King. Thank you. Bruce Campbell returned as the voice of Ash, whose girlfriend died in a bus crash at the end of Hail to the King. The game received mixed reviews on both platforms. Game Informer gave the PlayStation 2 version a 7.75 out of 10 and the Xbox version an 8 out of 10, and said that the game was short but fun. Campbell once again got praise for his voice acting. Chris Carl of IGN called the gameplay fun, if a little repetitive, and saying that the $20 price tag is good for what you get. Adam Dodd of Bloody Disgusting said the game was actually pretty enjoyable, and that it improved upon Hail to the King. The improvement could in fact be the addition of a one-liner button that, when pressed, caused Ash to recite a famous line from the trilogy, changing every time. Even if the gameplay is repetitive, it's fun to be mowing down a load of enemies with one-liners constantly being belted out the whole time. This is my boomstick. In at number 3, Saw 2 Flesh and Blood, another third-person survival horror game, which is the second in the franchise, which is obvious since it's Saw 2, so I don't know why I'm even specifying. Following the 2009 Saw the video game, this game was released in 2010, a week before the release of the 7th Saw film, Saw 3D. This game is set right in between the first 2 Saw films and picks up right after the first Saw movie. It features David Tapp's son Michael as the protagonist as he searches for clues about his father's death. By doing this, he becomes the next target of the Jigsaw Killer and his apprentice Pighead. The game received unfavorable reviews, with critics saying that the story had improved, but that the new combat system, which added the ability to use the environment to combat enemies, and a new system based on quick-time self-defense techniques, took away from the excitement and suspense of the game. There was a PC version announced, but never got released. Perhaps Jigsaw got to it first. Oh, spooky. Penultimately, at number 2, Friday the 13th, The Game. This survival horror is based on the Friday the 13th franchise, and is the 2017 version, not the old one, because my god. This game was so popular after its initial release that it was released as a physical copy for the PS4, Xbox One, and even got a Nintendo Switch version in August of 2019. The game is multiplayer similar to Dead by Daylight, with 7 players controlling Crystal Lake counselors, and 1 player controlling Jason Voorhees. The game is set in a variety of locations in and around the fictional camp Crystal Lake. Even though the game had a rocky start, since its release 2 years ago, the game has had numerous updates, including the addition of a single player mode. The mode consists of objective-based missions that allow you to take control of Jason against AI-controlled camp counselor bots. Some missions are recreations from the films, while others are completely original to the game. And finally, in at number 1, Alien Isolation. Alien Isolation was published by Sega in 2014 and is set 15 years after the 1979 Alien film. It follows the protagonist Amanda Ripley as she looks into the disappearance of her mother. This game, unlike earlier adaptations of the Alien franchise, focuses on stealth. It pits you up against a single invincible alien and was set to mimic the original film. The atmosphere and feel of this game is honestly terrifying, especially when any single wrong move can end up resulting in your death. Things like this are honestly what make horror games terrifying for me. and that is why Alien Isolation is at number 1. There we have it, friends, the top 10 video game adaptations you'll never forget. The reason there are some lesser known games on here is that the ones who did play them will never forget them, and if you played them, hopefully you'll agree. If you enjoyed, be sure to hit that like button as well as chopping that subscribe button with your chainsaw, and don't forget to ring the notification bell with your machete as well. I'm kinda pushing this. And leave me a comment down below about what horror game you'd like to see us play on the channel. I'm partial to The Forest myself. Thank you all so much for watching. I have been and shall remain Connor Monroe, and I'll see you in another video.